Hello and thank you for tuning in. I'm Darrell W. Perry.
And I'm Emberly McCullough.
Tonight we have a special episode on voter suppression.
Voter suppression is a strategy to influence the outcome of an election by discouraging or preventing people from exercising their right to vote. It is distinguished from political campaigning in that campaigning attempts to change likely voting behavior by changing the opinions of potential voters through persuasion and organization. Voter suppression instead attempts to reduce the number of voters who might vote against the candidate or proposition advocated by the suppressors.
Voting rights are under attack in this country. States are making it harder for people to vote as legislators pass suppression laws under the pretext of preventing voter fraud and safeguarding election integrity. These regressive laws take many forms and pose significant barriers for eligible voters trying to exercise this most fundamental constitutional right.
Here in Keene, New Hampshire, on Election Day, some of the local activists ran into voter suppression tactics. Activists were handing out quarter-page flyers for local candidates Ian Freeman and our own Darrell W. Perry.
I'm here at Ward 4 here in Keene, and been handing out these flyers all morning out here in the election area. And somebody came out to tell me that somebody who was a voter came out to tell me that they were told that they had to give this up. They were confiscating them when they walked in the front door. Another election agent here told me that it was electioneering. So I went and of course, they can say whatever they want and there's no negative consequence to them for saying whatever they want. So I have a feeling he was totally bullshitting, and I actually checked their own laws and he is. So I'm gonna walk in with a flyer in the hand and see what happens.
Are you registered?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I
And
am.
you are Ward 4.
I am, yep. And I do
Your
not have a photo ID. Oh, whoa, that's mine. Whoa, what are you doing? Excuse me, that is my flyer. Excuse me, that is my flyer.
I guess I'm having my picture taken.
What is all this about? I'm not passing anything out, I was taking notes.
We're vote. You can't do that either. And I'm sorry you feel the need to stage something, but you can't disrupt. There are many people who are trying to vote.
According to
Excuse me,
who?
ma'am. Are you here to vote? Are you registered? Come this way.
Wow. Maybe I should get another flyer?
I
mean, this is ridiculous.
Hello, I'm Sarah McMurphy. I'm the moderator for Ward
come
4.
this way, please.
State law
are you registered
says
to vote?
that there is no campaign material allowed beyond a certain point.
Can you show me that law, please?
Yes.
Great.
Are you registered to vote? Yes. They will ask for photo ID.
I think that someone has misinterpreted
Registered to vote, Ward
things.
4?
As I understand it, having read your electioneering codes, there's no campaigning allowed behind a certain point. But an individual walking in with
Do not allow materials.
What street do you live on?
the papers are not allowed to be left in the voting booth.
If you keep the paper so that it's not displayed, you may take it into the voting booth, put it back, and walk out with it.
This woman grabbed it from my hand without telling me anything about being able to put it away. She simply snatched it out of my hand.
I think she did that just for expediency because it's a very busy election and we're trying to keep things moving. But had you put it in a pocket?
I had it in my hand. She
All
grabbed it
right,
from my
well,
hand. She didn't say one thing to me.
I believe the sign that says campaign materials cannot be brought in is probably beyond this point.
Can you show me that sign?
I will in just a
From
moment.
8 a.m. to 7 p.m. here. There's one there. And then Ward 4 polling place sign. And then a no campaigning beyond this point, which of course I was simply walking in with something to help me vote, so that's not campaigning. Now their claim is going to be that simply by having something that says something voting related on it, that would somehow influence people that are in there. By the way, the volunteer who snatched my flyer is walking by right now, so there will be someone different inside. She just took off. They asked her to leave apparently, or maybe it was coincidentally the end of her shift. Either way, I now have a folded flyer as we walk in. They won't be able to claim anyone can see any kind of message on this. So we'll see how they behave this time. It's an simply an intimidating tactic that they're using. It's total BS. There is no law that backs it up, as was proven thus far. She couldn't find the law in her precious law book there. So they just do whatever they want to, as long as they can get away with it. And of course, most people don't know their rights, so they'll get away with it with most people. Good to go. So, what did we learn today? When people stand up for their rights, they get to keep them, and when they don't, they'll be oppressed. We're back here with Sarah, who just got a call back from the Attorney General's office.
From the city clerk's office,
city
actually.
clerk. And they said it was 659:43 that one cannot distribute or post campaign information past a certain point.
Within the, yeah.
And you're interpreting that to mean as if somebody just has something in their hands that is distributing?
We always have, yes.
You had said that to distribute does not include to hold something in one's own hand when walking in to go vote, correct?
Right, as long as it's being held in your hand and not like held up as a poster to somebody.
I did apologize
Thank you.
for the fact that it was taken rather rudely.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah.
All
I'll
right.
let you get
Good
back
to
to
meet
work.
you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye now.
Well, Darrell, you were at that specific ward that day. Can you let us know what happened after that?
I got there roughly 4:30, maybe 5 o'clock, and Ian told me what had happened. Basically the same thing that you just saw in that video. And no sooner did he finish telling me than some lady came up and said, "Just so you know, they took my flyer when I walked in." And so there's another half of this video. If you go online, you can find it on freekeene.com. The other half of the video shows me going inside with the flyer in my hand. And it's two different people that are at the door being greeters. And the guy tries to take it. And of course, I moved my hand away so he can't. And then the moderator lady came over and asked what the problem was. I said, "You're not following the law. We had this problem this morning, and it's happening again." And in a very condescending manner, she said, "Well, these are new greeters. I didn't get a chance to tell them the proper procedure that is now the new procedure." But it's not a new procedure. It's the original procedure, and she made up a new procedure.
As if that's an excuse for the behavior that these poll workers exhibited.
Well, they tell us that ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
So it should apply the same way. You shouldn't be enforcing these things as laws if you don't know what they are.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's obvious that these people do not understand. They're poll workers, but they don't understand even what the laws are that they're supposed to be enforcing. And instead, they're being very rude and ripping material out of people's hands, which is, I mean, if you did that on the street to someone, that could be considered assault.
Yes.
You would be assaulting that person. So, I don't understand that why they think that they can get away with doing things like that. It's just ridiculous, and it's just another a form of trying to keep people from exercising their right to vote.
Right, and as Ian said, when you stand up for your rights, you get to keep your rights.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons. Most people don't realize that government officials can lie and get away with it. Whereas if you lie to a government official, then you go to jail for making a false report or perjury or something else.
Right, and how wrong is that government officials can be held to a different standard than regular citizens? I mean, this is something, and I'm glad that Ian pointed that out in saying that if you don't stand up for your rights, you will lose them, because it's very important that people remember that.
Right, and unfortunately, it seems like the way the laws are actually enforced, it creates two classes of men, which actually violates the New Hampshire Constitution, which in Article 10 states that there shall not be two classes of men.
Right, right. Well, several of the tactics government officials are using include voter ID laws, purging voter rolls, Jim Crow laws, felon disenfranchisement, disinformation about voting procedures, partisan election administration, inequality in election day resources, caging lists, and rigged voting ballot machines. And now we have a video about some ballot machines.
I'm a programmer. I worked for NASA, worked for ExxonMobil, worked for Florida Department of Transportation.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections?
Yes.
How do you know that to be the case?
Because in October of 2000, I wrote a prototype for Congressman Tom Keene at the company I worked for in Oviedo, Florida, that did just that.
And when you say did just that, it would rig an election?
It would flip the vote 51-49 to whoever you wanted it to go to and whichever race you wanted to win.
And would that program that you designed be something that elections officials that might be on county boards of elections could detect?
They'd never see it.
So how would such a program, a secret program that fixes the election, how could it be detected?
You would have to view it either in the source code, or you'd have to have a receipt and then count the hard paper against the actual vote total. Other than that, you won't see it.
Given the availability of such vote rigging software and the testimony that has been given under oath of substantial statistical anomalies and gross differences between exit polling data and the actual tabulated results, do you have an opinion whether or not the Ohio election, presidential election, was hacked?
Yes, I would say it was.
So in other words, there's absolutely no assurance whatsoever in anything with regard to these machines?
Absolutely none.
Anybody who trusts electronic voting machines should have their head examined.
Yeah, and as that video showed, voting machines can be rigged. Yeah. And that's one reason that I like voting here in New Hampshire is you actually have the physical paper ballot that, you can always go say, I want to see the ballots. And then they have the ballots there for you where they can, do the hand recount. There's no way to do a hand recount of a voting machine because it leaves no paper trail. There's what the machine says. And if that gets hacked, then, as the guy said, there's no way to trace that there's a virus on the voting machine. Mm-hmm. So, you're getting flawed information with no way to verify that.
Right. And another good documentary, which is a full-length documentary that goes into a lot more detail on, these voting machines and how bad they are and how the manufacturers know that they are bad and that they don't always, count things right. And they're very easy to manipulate is hacking democracy. And if you haven't seen that, I highly suggest you do it. You can get it on Google Video. More than likely you can get it on Netflix. I'm not sure about that, but you can get it. And it's a very, very good documentary. And it really goes into detail on the 2000 election in Florida and how in one of the counties, Al Gore had negative 16,000 votes. How does that happen? How do you get negative 16,000 votes? Because there's not negative 16,000 people in that particular precinct.
Well, I was not aware of the precinct where Al Gore supposedly got negative 16,000 votes. I do know that during the 2010 election down in Florida, the way the ballot was designed on the electronic machines, there was one of the congressional races in one of the precincts where there was just a very enormous amount of people that voted a blank ballot for that race because somehow they skipped over that because there were multiple races on the screen. Or there were, I think they called it a crowded ballot for one of the races because there were 7 people. Ballot. And, that's another thing. When they try to keep people off of the ballot,
Yeah.
And then when you limit choice, you limit how many people are actually going to go out to cast a ballot, because there's not actually a choice to be made. In Oklahoma, they've only had Republicans and Democrats on the ballot for president in every election since the '04 election. The last time there was an independent or a minor party on the ballot in Oklahoma was 2000. Ever since then, the only two choices in a presidential election in Oklahoma is Republican and Democrat. They do not allow write-in votes.
And that's another form of voter suppression, because not everyone who votes is a Republican or a Democrat. You have independent voters, you have people who belong to other minor parties like the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, as well as there are numerous other parties that exist in each and every state. And not all of them exist in each state, but there are several minor parties, that exist. And the fact that these people don't get a chance to cast their ballot for their candidate because their candidate doesn't even get to be on the ballot, and when you don't even have the right to write in a candidate as well, is just another form of voter suppression, because you are excluding those people from making the choices that they want to.
Right, and one tactic that's being used, and it's picked up out west, luckily it's not spread to New Hampshire, is what they call the top two voting system, where you have, it's called a blanket primary, where all of the Republicans, Democrats, and independent and minor party candidates are on one primary ballot, but they still call it a primary ballot. So people think that, oh, well, I'm registered Republican, I have to vote for a Republican. Or I'm registered Democrat, I have to vote for a Democrat. And then the top two vote getters from that primary are the only two candidates on the general election ballot, and write-ins are prohibited. So it's another way to suppress voter turnout and basically disenfranchise voters.
Right.
And a lot of these things I go into a lot more detail in the book Duopoly, How the Republicrats Control the Electoral Process. And one more story here from New Hampshire. In 2002, the New Hampshire Senate election phone jamming scandal involved Republican officials attempting to reduce the number of Democratic voters by paying professional telemarketers in Idaho to make repeated hang-up calls to the telephone number used by the Democratic Party's Ride to the Polls phone line on Election Day. By tying up the phone lines, voters seeking rides by the Democratic Party would have more difficulty reaching the party to ask for transportation to and from the polls.
Wow. This has to be one of the most ridiculous and egregious things that I've seen a party do to another party. I mean, it just shows you that the parties don't really care about what, about really hearing the voice of the people. If they're going to do things like tie up phone lines by hiring a company in another state, to prevent people who need to get to the polling station, who maybe, cannot drive, or, whatever, for whatever reason, if they can't drive or whatever, that need to get to the polling station, and they're not allowed to reach the party headquarters to get a ride, then that is an extreme form of voter suppression, in my opinion.
Right, and
bad. That's really bad.
It makes me think that maybe a good way for the cops to increase the number of people with DUIs or public intoxication would be, after the bars close, just keep calling the taxi cab companies. That way the people that are drunk at the bar have no way to find alternative rides home.
Right.
It's basically the same thing of, oh, we don't want you doing this thing because it benefits us. Well, it benefits the cops because then they increase their revenue, because they're basically revenue generators anyway. So, there are ways that this could be used in other forms other than just trying to suppress the opposing party. And it's not even really an opposing party. It's the illusion of an opposition party. The actual opposition parties are generally kept off of the ballot because in most states where the minor parties have to file petitions to get on the ballot, the Republicans and Democrats will challenge those petitions, thus removing their competition.
Right. It's a shame that, you know, parties will go to this extent to, you know, keep people from getting to the polling stations. It's just amazing to me. And the fact that, you know, the two major parties actively go against minor parties to hold them and keep them from the ballot. There are so many restrictive ballot access laws across the United States that it's just insane to me. You know, if you look at the European model, what most European countries use,
they have fair ballot access.
Fair ballot access.
And 5 or 6 parties in Parliament.
Right. So they use proportional representation instead of what we have here. And I think in a lot of ways, it's not a perfect system, just like the setup that we have with the two parties. It's not a perfect system.
Well, Canada...
But you get a better representation for the people because, you know, the people get a proportion, the parties get a proportion of the seats in Parliament.
Right. Well, even in Canada and the UK, where they don't use proportional representation, they use basically congressional districts, but they're called ridings. They would, you know, you have fair ballot access, all parties get the same path, and they consistently have 5 or 6 parties in Parliament, thus representing more views than just, you know, right and left.
Okay. Well, now we have a special message from Amanda Bouldin of Shire Sharing.
Hi, it's Amanda from Shire Sharing. I just want to give a big thank you to all the supporters that have donated so much money in just the last 6 days. I'm really blown away by how much support Shire Sharing has this year. We have almost $3,000. Our goal is $4,000. We're almost there. I'm so inspired by how much support this has and how enthusiastic everyone is this early in the game. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll tell you. Over at shiresharing.org, basically we're a bunch of Liberty folks in New Hampshire that want to put our private charity principles into practice. Liberty activists in New Hampshire have been inspired to deliver Thanksgiving meals to the homes of impoverished families in the area. Last year was our first year doing this. We raised enough money to deliver Thanksgiving meals to 52 households in Concord. Today is the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and we're driving to the homes of some needy families and giving them baskets full of food so they can celebrate Thanksgiving. 52 households to have Thanksgiving dinner, and I think that's like 174 people total. It was a lot of fun and a lot of work, and it was exhausting but really fulfilling. And this year we decided to quadruple our goal. We want to do 200 households this year, and the goal for fundraising is $4,000. And just some background, a little over a year ago my dad died, and as long as I can remember growing up in Texas, every Thanksgiving he'd rope all of his friends and coworkers and customers into helping him deliver Thanksgiving meals to needy families out in Texas. He spent months getting ready every year, and it was the one big thing he did for the holidays. And so after he died, I realized as fall of 2011 was impending that I wouldn't get to do that with him ever again. And he called it the basket brigade because they pile all the food into baskets and just leave it at doorways, totally anonymous. And then I realized that I can do it out here in New Hampshire even without him, because I have a whole bunch of friends, a huge network of Liberty activists that really believe in private charity, and it's really important to them. So after Thanksgiving was over, I was exhausted and kind of hit this lull. Like, it was such a high to really accomplish this without much experience. We didn't really know what we were doing, but it worked out. And that's an example of spontaneous order, right? So once it was over, I kind of felt lost. I wanted to do more charity work. So in December, we raised several $1,000s from Liberty activists and delivered backpacks full of essentials to the homeless in Manchester.
Well, we had more people come out this time. We had more activists come out this time to help, and we had more homeless folks come to get backpacks this time. So that was cool.
And we did over 50 backpacks, and the backpacks were full of stuff like personal hygiene stuff, all-weather gear, and bus passes, and important things like that. And then in the springtime of 2012, we did another fundraiser for Chris Lopez. She needed a new wheelchair, and $500 which is what she needed, poured in less than 18 hours over PayPal from Liberty activists across the country. The passion that Liberty activists have for private charity is incredible. But I guess what I'm bugging you for today is we need lots of volunteers. It took 15 or 20 people to really get it all going last year, and this year we have 4 times as many households that we're going to hit. If you want to donate, we accept Federal Reserve notes and silver and gold and Bitcoin. We have a lot of Bitcoin, I'm proud to say. So if you want to donate or volunteer, you can get on ShireSharing.org. You can join our Facebook group, facebook.com/ShireSharing, and that's Shire, sharing as in New Hampshire, the Shire, and sharing as in charity. So thanks again, guys, for all the support. I'm really shocked, amazed at how much support this has, and it really warms my heart, and I know we're going to warm a lot of other people's hearts and their bellies this Thanksgiving.
Well, I'm happy to report that the Thanksgiving dinners were delivered yesterday. I talked to Amanda on Saturday, and they actually had to rent a U-Haul truck. Might not have been from U-Haul, but they had to rent a big truck in order to get all of the meals, and that was just for one of the routes.
Wow.
They had, I believe it was, a little over a dozen people that were actually delivering to different places, and one of the specific routes they had to get basically a box truck to be able to fit everything in because there were too many meals to fit into a car.
Wow, that's amazing. And it just goes to show you that, to all the disbelievers out there, that a private, totally voluntary charity, cannot work, that people aren't, that people have to be forced into giving is so not true. And Amanda and all the hard work that she does to make Shire Sharing a success, not only for all of the Thanksgiving dinners that they do, but also for the backpacks that they do for the homeless. So thank you, Amanda, for everything that you've done. Thanks, Shire Sharing. And thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Join us again next week for another installment of ShireTV. For more news and analysis, I'm Darrell Perry.
And I'm Emberly McCullough. May you each find happiness, peace, and prosperity.